Thank you for joining us on TRP Live, a program created by the Reclamation Project, the folks who believe in no soul left behind. It was started to have candid discussions on real issues that impact people and to showcase stories that edify the Christian journey like today. So, welcome. I am your host, Ms. April. Tonight, we have a graduate of the HBCU Oakwood College in Huntsville, Alabama. We have news anchor NBC 15 WPMI in Mobile. She is a member of the National Association of Black Journalists and a proud member of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Tonight, will you join me in welcoming television personality Kym Anderson?
Hi, April.
Hi, Kym. How are you this evening?
I am great. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much. I know you're a busy woman. You've got a lot of things on your plate. So I am so grateful that you've taken the time to just sit down and chat with me this evening.
Well, I'm thankful for you for reaching out to me.
So, Oakwood College. I understand that not only are you a graduate, but you go back a few generations, and then there are succeeding generations after you that are graduates of Oakwood. Tell us about your decision. Was there pressure to go to Oakwood, or was it a deliberate decision?
It was divine intervention, is what it
Okay.
was for me to go to Oakwood. And I love telling people this story. I was determined I was not going to go to Oakwood University. My parents went to Oakwood, my aunts, my uncles, and even though I loved going there when I was little and we do alumni weekend, and so I knew a lot of people there and would see a lot of different things. I wanted to be my own person and I wanted to go to school in California where I grew up. So I went to Cal State. I started my freshman year at Cal State San Bernardino.
Mhm.
And when I came to Oakwood to visit that summer, I was there. My mother was in Huntsville. And I was on campus with a friend of mine. And I ran into the vice president on campus at the time, Dr. Melvin Davis, and he knew my parents and he was like, "Hey, you're going to come to Oakwood?" And I was like, "No, I'm at Cal State San Bernardino." He said, "I really want you here. I really want you here." And I was like, "Well, you know what? I'm having a good time where I am." And he was like, "Well, you know what? I think we need to pray about this." I said, "Okay, whatever." And then we prayed about it and I thought about it that night. And I was like, "Well, you know what? I can't even come to Oakwood because my scholarship that I had was at Cal State. And literally I was there with paying nothing in the system but
Mm.
books." And he said, "That's all right. We'll make it happen." And then this friend of my parents came and said, "Hey, I hear you're actually even thinking about coming to school here. I don't know. It's a possibility." She said, "If you come, I'll pay your first year tuition." So I ended up at Oakwood.
Wow. Nice,
And it
nice
was the
story.
best decision I ever made because I don't think I would be where I know I would not be where I am today if it were not for the caring professors at Oakwood University.
Is it the HBCU experience, or was it that you already had community there?
It was both. It was both. When I was at Cal State San Bernardino, it was a larger college. You sat in an auditorium with a bunch of kids. The professor didn't even know your name. You were a number. And they never even knew who you were unless you went and had a problem and had to talk to them. But at Oakwood, and something about all HBCUs, I want to say most of them, they're smaller colleges, they're smaller universities, and the teachers knows your name. So I would go into my classes and if even if I were late, somebody would call me and say, "Hey, I can't." One of my teachers, specifically, I'm thinking off a hand, my English teacher, Keena Henson, and she was like, "Girl, you need to get up. You need to come to class." Because everybody knew I hated morning classes, and they took time to talk to you. They wanted to make sure that you listened. It was a lot of class participation. You weren't a number. You were a person. And you had instructors who really cared about you. My communications instructor, she didn't play. She had worked in the business before, and she taught us their deadlines. You have deadlines in TV. If you can't make deadlines here in college, you'll never survive. So if you're late for class, you're gonna get locked out. If your assignment was late, it wasn't, "Oh, I have to make, you have a day to make it up." You're gonna get an F. So she was tough, but she was caring, and she disciplined me. That's what I say. She got me ready for the world of journalism.
Wow. And I can attest to that. I went to Jackson State University, so I understand the HBCU experience. And I often said, we may have played hard, but we studied harder
Exactly. My
because
mother Jackson, Mississippi.
there you go. They had a vested interest in our success.
They do.
So, yeah, wonderful. So, communications. How did you choose that area of study?
I fell in love with it. I started off as a chemistry major because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I knew I was good at chemistry in high school. My father's an organic chemist, he has his PhD in it. So he was like, "Oh, you're so great at chemistry, just do it, go to medical school." But I can't stand the sight of blood. So I said, "Okay, you know what? I'll just do it till I figure out what I want to do."
Mhm.
And I took an intro to broadcasting class as an elective and fell in love with it. And I found my passion. Switched my
Wow.
major, and that's how I ended up in communications.
Got it, got it, got it. So, how has your career path evolved? Was it a linear kind of a thing for you? Were there twists and turns along the way? Tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are now as lead anchor.
Again, I have to say, God has truly blessed me, and I have seen his hand in everything that I have done. My sophomore year of college, I decided that when I said I wanted to do introduction to broadcast, we had a radio station on campus, WOCG, and they usually had upperclassmen that would work there, juniors and seniors. But I went up there and I knew they had an opening, and even if it was for work study. So I interviewed with the program director at the time, Victoria Joyner, and she said, "You know what? I like what you have to say. I like your determination. Welcome to the world of radio. You'll never have to work fast food again." And that opened the door for radio. My grandmother was from lived in Huntsville. Like I said, my mother was from Jackson, but she moved all her children to Huntsville to go to Oakwood University. She wanted them to get a Christian education at the HBCU. And so she lived right down the street from the radio station. I would go to her house after my morning shift, and we'd eat and we talked. And let me say, when I said I was going to go up to the radio station, my grandmother and I sat there and prayed together because she's a praying woman and
Mhm.
really believed that, you know what, God has his plan for you, but you've got to ask him for what you want. And my senior year of college, I had done internships, and I'd done an internship at the CBS station. And somebody told me, "Hey, the NBC station across the street is looking for someone. You should turn in your resume reel," because I really worked hard on campus. And I was like, "I don't think they're going to hire me because I'm still in college." So, of course, I went to my grandmother, and she and I sat down there and prayed about it. She said, "If this is God's will, the door is going to be open." I interviewed, I showed my resume, I bugged the news director for 2 weeks if he was going to give me the job, and he hired me part-time while I was in college. So, which is really unheard of nowadays. So I started my senior year in college working in television as the morning cut-in anchor there. So I actually was anchoring before I was reporting. And he gave me the
Wow.
chance on the weekends to start reporting so I could build up my reporting skills, and just and went from there. Ended up in Huntsville, then in Anniston, Alabama, as a 10 o'clock anchor there when I left Huntsville. And that was pretty interesting. I was there for a couple of months and then came back to Huntsville as the morning anchor, and then went to the early evening anchor, and then came here to Mobile as the night anchor, as the prime anchor.
Amazing. God has his way of putting us in places and putting us in front of people that we need along the way. And in that, this is a competitive field. You're in a highly competitive profession. So, what do you see as your most competitive advantage?
It is a very competitive field, and you always have somebody there waiting to knock you off your seat. I always said, because people want to be on television, But I have a passion for my job, and I think that's the difference. I'm not there to just be on TV. I love meeting different people. I love telling their stories. I love fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. We have a pretty interesting situation here in our area where you've got people in a small town who are being robbed and overcharged thousands of dollars for a water bill. I'm talking about the tune of $2,000 to $3,000, and we've uncovered that the water board has actually been funneling that money for themselves in the tune of $4 million. So, or let me say allegedly, because nobody's been convicted. So let me take that back and say allegedly. And so we're really working to fight for those people there. And I want to be that voice. And I think that gives, and then just the longevity of being here and being at the station as long as I have. And it's interesting because my pastor, my church said, Kym, you're there for a reason, because not only for a voice for people, but you're an advocate for our children. And I do believe in fighting for our kids. There's so many children that are on the streets here. We've got a high crime rate, especially this year is one of the highest that we've had in Mobile. And I truly believe it's because a lot of these children, they are raising themselves. They have no extracurricular activities to do. They get into trouble because they're bored. So I've got a foundation that I'm actually just getting off the ground to try to get money. And I got a first sponsorship for first couple of kids to put them in after school programs, things outside of football, because that's what a lot of these kids know here, especially for our young ladies. So we've got money coming in for them to do dance, for them to do acting and theater and volleyball and softball, to where their parents are saying, a lot of them from single parent homes, that we can't afford this. Okay, well, you know what? There's no excuse now, because we're going to get the money to put your kids in something and to also provide rides for them to get there. So that's one of the big things that I'm working on right now.
So are you able to elaborate on the foundation? What is the name of the foundation, just in case there are someone out there who would like to contribute?
Yes, it's called the Rubies Foundation. And I picked that name because mainly I'm working with girls. That's a big problem. I've always said people have so many programs for boys and they think that boys are the problem. There's so many girls now who are spend a lot of time on social media, and they're fighting and they're bickering. And if you can get to the girls, I've always said you can get to the boys, because the boys want the girls. And I use the example, Adam wanted Eve, so he risked his life to eat the apple. And those boys are going to do that. If you have these girls get, say, hey, we're not going to take this behavior from you, we've got better things that we're doing, then you'll start getting the boys to behave, because they're going to want the girls.
True. Ruby's Foundation.
Yes.
Is that ruby as in the jewel?
As rubies in the jewel, because a virtuous woman's price is far above rubies.
Amen.
So I want to use ruby.
Amen. So now you're talking about some of your community activism, and I hear that coming through with the Ruby's Foundation, and you also have a nice sized family. So is that part of the impetus for this foundation, or is this just out of a need that you saw that needed to be filled?
Both. I have 6 children total. 3 I gave birth to. 3 I've had the pleasure of helping to raise. We're a blended family. We call it ourselves the modern Brady Bunch. But my children, especially my oldest son, even when I was a single mother, his friends always hung at the house because I would keep my kids busy. I mean, Saturday nights, that was our board game night. We'd have board games. If it was cold, toast marshmallows in front of the fireplace. I'd have foods out for them. And so a lot of his friends came from single parent families, single mothers. And they just loved hanging at our house because they were like, oh, you take so much time and you invest in the kids. I put them in basketball and soccer and theater. My middle son is actually in college now as a musical theater major. He did amazing in a lot of his work that he's done, and he full ride scholarship. So that just the love of children and wanting to see them do better and wanting to make sure that they were successful. And so many kids I see, and they would tell me, I wish that we had what your kids have. And they didn't have materialistic things. It was just somebody who took the time to care for them and make sure that they were successful.
Amen. So, with all of this, you're a pretty involved lady. How do you balance career, children, husband, family, community, all of that? How do you do it?
I don't know. No, I'm just gonna be honest with you.
Honestly.
Honestly, I, you know what? I just, like I tell people, I just do what I have to do. You just make it happen. As a mother, you make it happen. Fortunately, I have a job, even though it is stressful and it is demanding. I have a boss who has 5 kids of his own, and he's very family oriented, very family friendly workplace. So there's days where I can call and say, hey, look, I'm going to be an hour later because I need to do a field trip with my kid, and that's more important than me coming in right now to meet the 2 o'clock meeting, or either I'll do it on Zoom or something like that. And he's always been very accommodating. Even when my kids were little, my youngest, I came here to Mobile, she was 4 months old. There were days where they were in their car seat, sitting in the newsroom. People were entertaining them. People were babysitting them when we had breaking news, but it was never an issue. Never. And I
That
just,
wow, that's a
yeah, it is
blessing.
great because I've talked to other people on TV and they don't even get dinner breaks. So I got dinner breaks to go home and check on my kids, and people were like, "Did you want to leave Mobile? I've been here now for 14 years." And I'm like, no, not right now. This place has been very convenient for me to raise my kids. So it's the best place for us to be.
That's amazing. So, as you talk about your work life, what is your typical day like? Or
Well,
are there typical days? Is each day
typical day.
different?
I try to stay on a routine. I just got another kid driving. So thankfully she and my youngest go to the same school. But before they were driving, I would have to get up, be out the door at 6:15, drive kids to school, come back, walk the dog, uh, grab some breakfast or a shake, head to the gym, do a class at the gym, come back. If I had a different, it depends on if I have a speaking engagement, because I have to speak at a lot of different events or schools or companies, then I would get dressed, head there. If not, I would try to prep dinner, get that made in the oven on time, bake, and make some calls and get to work. And then I would be at work till 11 o'clock at night.
And start all over again at 6
Start all
a.m.
over again. Yes, at least now I don't have to get up out of the bed until 7:30. Then
Okay.
I walk the dog, hit the gym, and go from there.
Amazing. Superwoman, modern day.
Crazy woman.
Doing what every working Black mom does every day.
Exactly. We make it happen. We just make
Every
it
day.
happen.
Wow. So you talk about your work environment being family friendly and supportive. How has working in journalism, well, let me rephrase that. So your responsibility is to report the news.
Yes.
And a lot of the news we are now seeing or have been seeing over the course of several years now is negative. So, how does your faith impact your reporting?
I do a lot of praying, and I learned years ago that I have to, when I walk out the door, I have to detach. I have to leave work at work. And I pray in my car, and then I come home and I take care of my children, I take care of my husband, my family. And news has always been bad. Let me just say this. It just, you hear more now with 24-hour news. 24-hour news. So it's good when we can report on something good. But even before I had kids, I remember thinking, man, I don't even know how I can bring kids in this world. The evil that you see in people and the different stories that we have, and what people are doing to other folks and to kids. But I had to learn that I have to detach. You have to. You've got to have faith. And there's been times where I've had to do stories and I know people are in pain and they're crying. And I've actually had to sit there and just say, look, I'm praying for you. I'll pray with you. But then you have to detach.
And that has come I guess over the course of years, it's now a part of how you operate. And so do you have the option with the amount of seniority and tenure you have to choose what you'd like to report or
I
not?
do. I'm not out on the street as much because I have so many newscasts that I'm anchoring. I do the 5, the 6, the 7, and the 10. And so one example is I chose to do what we call Fighting Back. It's a series on bringing um, good to light for our teenagers because we've done so many stories on this teen killing this person or teenagers being arrested for major crimes and just it's just really bad. So was able to do something to focus on the positive in our teens that we did once a week. And I really enjoyed that. And I went to my news director and said, look, we've got to have something for these kids to look up to. We've got to have something for them to do. Even on my Facebook page, I'll put different teenagers that are starting their own business,
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, just trying to highlight that we have good kids in our community and these kids need to be example for other children and your kids can do the same thing. I don't do the basic street crime anymore unless I have to. There's been a few times where I've had to get out in the middle of a shooting and go out and report when we've had nobody there to do it because our reporters were, 45 minutes or so away and the shooting was close. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll get out there and I'll do it. Or some other type of horrible stories, but I don't go as much. But that doesn't change the effect that it can have on you. Um, and I can recall 2 stories that I know in particular that just really broke me down. Actually, 3, because there's another one that I had nightmares about for years, and I was finally able to let that go. So
Wow.
there's 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 a bad part to it, but you've got to keep moving.
Yeah. Wow. That then talks about your faith. So let's talk about your faith journey a little bit. Um, do you have a defining moment in your faith journey that solidified the realness of God for you?
I have a couple of them. The first one that I just touched on briefly when I decided to go to Oakwood University, transfer from Cal State San Bernardino, and just Oakwood University itself, being at that college with other peers that have such great faith and everybody's uplifting each other and just praising God, you know that God is there. You can't have a whole campus where everybody is just, hey, we've got your back, we're praying for you, let's pray together. That just really that strengthened my faith in God. I already had a strong faith, but you go through that period with questioning.
Mhm.
And when I got my job in television, when I had my children, and just recently I was at church and again, my pastor walked up to me and he said, hey, I want you to be our youth speaker. This was last month. And I was like, what? You talking about like for youth day, like preaching a sermon? He was, yes. And he said, Kym, God has put you again in this position to reach somebody. And I believe that you can really reach our youth. You've got it in you and you just don't know. Because I've spoken at different groups and different organizations before, but never have I delivered a sermon. So this time around, I went out on faith and I prayed about it. And God, I said, I don't even know what to talk about. And he prepared my sermon for me. So
And what was the sermon on?
it was based on 2 Timothy 3,
Okay.
verses 1 through 5, talking about things that are happening in the last days. So I talked to our youth and our entire church on how at one time I never thought that this was going to happen in my lifetime because I remember learning that verse when I was in elementary school at a private school. And now you look around you and it's all happening. Everything is happening. Everything everything in every single word in those verses is now. It's here and now.
Yeah. So tell me how you would describe your walk of faith. How would you, if you
With
could put it in words, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as very strong.
Okay.
with 4 teenagers at one time. You can't help but for it to be very strong. And daily I get up and I didn't even put that in my whole routine, but I have devotion that I do every day. I take that time with God and I send devotions to my children. And I feel that even now I have to show them my faith more because they're going through a time where uh, social media and friends are such an influence on them that I have to tell them that you've got to remember God is your bigger influence. Even when I'm at work, I have to stop. I'll stop there. I'll sometimes say prayer in my head. So I think that my connection with God and my walk of faith has just become even stronger than it was in the past. And I thought it was pretty strong then, but daily I'm seeing, and I see what my mother and my grandmother would always say. It's not always about your religion, but it's your spiritual walk with God. You have to have your own individual relationship because He's our Father in heaven. And as much as I love my children and would give my life for them, I understand now at least a part of His depth of love for us. And so I'd consider it really strong.
Amen. Amen. So, personally, if Kym had a day where she was just going to have fun, no children, what would that day be like?
Oh, it'd be in a day spa, honey. I'd be there for the whole. I would get all the bells and whistles. I'm talking about I would get a massage, a facial, scrubs, manicure, pedicure, just sitting in a sauna. Just I want to be there from the time that the doors open until the time that the doors close. That's all I want to do. My husband considers fun. He's like, okay, you know what? Every now and then he's got to get out and they do a boys' weekend. I don't even want to do a girls' weekend. I just want to just have peace and quiet at a spa. You can even let me stay the night. That would be my perfect day. Perfect.
That's a purely unwinding kind of I get it. I get it.
Yes.
So, um, what was the last book you read?
I've read the Michelle Obama book. And I want to tell you that is actually the first book that I've read personally on my own since my children were born because I've always been reading kids' books. And I would say, and I told my husband, I don't ever get to read for myself. I'm always doing something for kids. And he knew that I wanted that book and he bought it for me as a birthday gift. And so I got to read it.
She's an awesome person. She's an
Yes.
awesome, what do they say, forever first lady? She's forever
Forever
first
First
lady.
Lady. The
Yes, yes.
classiest woman. I love Michelle Obama. If we could keep her in office forever,
Some kind of way.
some kind of way, we'd make
Yeah,
that happen. But yeah, just interesting reading her story and her journey in life. So I really enjoyed her book.
yeah. So, tell us a little bit about your family. What do the kids like? What do they not like? And how do you navigate all of that?
Which is great is our kids love each other. I mean, and they are pretty much they're together in a lot of things they like. I've got my oldest son, and his name is Mac. He's 22. He is in the Air Force as well as in college, and he took that route because he wants to go into medicine, and he wants to be an okay, let me see if I can get this right. He wants to be an orthopedic emergency surgeon because he loves the emergency room. And he, when we talked to someone who was in medical school or director of the medical school here in Mobile, the University of South Alabama, and he said, small world, I got to tell this quick story real quick. When my son decided he wanted to go into medicine, I said, let's see what it's going to take for you to get there. So I called a friend of mine who said, let me get you in touch with the director of minority recruiting at the University of South Alabama Medical School. So we get to talking. I told him I went to Oakland University. He said, oh, I went to Southern Adventist University in Chattanooga. I said, really? I said, where did you go to medical school? Medical school. He said, Loma Linda in California. I said, oh, my dad taught out there. He said, really? Who's your dad? Dr. Dave Richardson. Oh my goodness. He was one of my instructors. So that's how small this world is. And so he was like, yes, I want to talk to your son. He's told us there's so many people who apply for medical school every year. It's so competitive. He needed to have an edge. And they're denying kids who have straight A's, who are straight A students. So he told him, look, go to the Air Force, but only go if you score high enough on your ASVAB that you can go into their medical training program, because you'll still get college credits, even though you're going to have to be at a college for about a year or two. So he took the ASVAB and he scored so high that he was an aerospace medical evac, is where they put him in the position. So he has learned, he's gotten his EMT, his LPN nursing, all in this time that he's been in, the 2 years that he's been in, and he travels all over the place. Like, he just got back from Portugal, but he'll be back. So he's got the medical training he needs and some of the research. Now he'll finish his last 2 years of college come the fall. So that's my oldest one. So I'm very proud of him. And then my second one is Connor, and he is my songbird. This kid has an amazing voice. I don't know where he got it from, but he can sing a soprano all the way down to a tenor. His range is just absolutely amazing. Wow. And he has this love for musical theater, just loves it. He takes to the stage and he's a whole different person. It's just, his personality just blossoms, because here he's just kind of quiet and goofy. And he's at Belmont University in Nashville, because he didn't get to go to Oakwood because they don't have a musical theater program, even though they have a great musical program. So he's there, which is a nice Christian college. Then I have my Lauren, I call my bonus baby. She lives in Atlanta. She doesn't live with us, but she's a senior in high school, and she just got accepted to Southern University in Baton Rouge. So we're excited about that. And then we have Kendall, who's also my bonus baby. She lives with us, and she is a junior at Blount High School. She runs track. She's in the Mardi Gras court here, which is a big thing, because, Mobile is home of Mardi Gras, just in case no one knew. It's not New Orleans. We started
I have heard that.
Yes, we are there. And we've got Kirkland, who's my baby girl. She is a freshman at the Blount High School here in Mobile, and doing very well. She dances. She does competitive dance. She's been doing it since she's been dancing since she was 2. She's been competing competitively in dance since she was 5, and has all types of trophies, and she's just got a natural talent in this. She's amazing. I wish I had the rhythm that she has. And she's a cheerleader also in our high school. And then we've got our youngest baby, who is 7, and her name is Harper.
Wow. It sounds like you have a family of high achievers, which is a wonderful thing. It is a blessing. And I know you're a proud mom and all of that. So let's see, we're gonna kind of get close to wrapping this up.
Okay.
But I would like to know what your life's theme song is, if you have one. If you had to tell your life story in a song, what song would that be?
Oh, wow. No one's ever asked me that question, but so I have to sit there and think about it, because there's so many different songs out there. And lately, the song that I've been listening to is My Redeemer with Karima Kibble. And I love that song. And not just because Karima is a friend of mine, and her mother was actually my oldest son's first babysitter. I love Miss Trotter. But the words are so deep, because you think about all that God can do. And so I think about all that he has done for me, because he is, there's been some times literally I tell my kids, and I don't get all into that. I was like, God has really pulled me from close to the depths of hell up to where I am now. And that's something that you don't ever want to have to go through. So I know that he lives, because he's really done so much for me, and the success that I have, there's no way that I could have had it without his guidance, because anyone who's a single mother knows the pain, the heartache of raising children alone, and just the different things that we have to go through in life. I mean, I've been through a divorce, got remarried to a college sweetheart, and just things that have gone on in my life beforehand.
Wonderful, wonderful. Funny moment. What is your favorite food?
I love Mexican food. And Mexican food doesn't always love me because it sits right on my belly. But I love Mexican food. Burritos, tacos, enchiladas, tostadas. I love it. That is my favorite.
Wonderful.
My,
Yay.
I tell people at work, because every time they're saying, well, what are you eating? It's something Mexican. I'm like, what? I said, look, my whole family at this time believes they're Hispanic. So you cannot tell them that they're because that's what they have grown up on, is not the Creole food, not even all the seafood that we have down here in Mobile, but they're going to eat Mexican food.
Wow. So is this authentic Mexican? This is not like Taco Bell Mexican we're talking about.
No, no. My husband grew up in California like me, so he's from LA. I'm from Riverside,
Okay.
and we're in that kitchen cooking Mexican food. That's the first food that I learned how to cook. It was just so wild, even though my mother's from Jackson, Mississippi, and she's gonna make macaroni and cheese and pinto beans and all the other Southern food. But okay, yeah, that's good, but we want the Mexican food.
All right. All right. I hear you. I hear you. I want to say thank you. Are there any other thoughts or words of encouragement you'd like to give before we end today's conversation?
Yes, just to keep strong, keep with the faith, and for those who really want to, because get asked this question all the time by younger kids, if you're listening, or college students, that I know sometimes it seems so hard that you're not going to break into the news business, but don't waver. Don't just, if this is something that you want to do, because it's got to be a business that you love, because you're going to eat, sleep, and breathe it 10 hours a day. It's not 8 hours a day, it's 10 hours a day or more. I've been working on the story all weekend as well when I'm supposed to be off. That hopefully we can break for Monday. So just stay strong. It'll happen.
All right. Amen. Kym, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me this evening. It was absolutely wonderful having you here, sharing your life's journey with us. Thank you all for tuning in. We hope that you tune in again next time for another broadcast of TRP Live. My final message for you tonight is, oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and how unfathomable his ways. For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen. Until next time, good night.